Welcome to another episode of This Is Why I Don't Vote podcast. Episode 31. Your safe space to discuss sports, politics, social issues, and religion, where I promise you we will take it all very, very seriously, but not too seriously. In this episode, we will discuss my evening, the second night on my journey with Mother Ayahuasca. And then, because it's like a massive pile of defecation in a hallway that we've all walked through, we have to discuss the dog and pony show that is your U.S. Congress, the debt ceiling, the infrastructure bill, and the reconciliation bill. Let's begin.
Act 1, my second evening with Mother Ayahuasca.
I woke up the morning after the first night with Mother Ayahuasca. I was still tripping. It was an amazing and yet terrifying feeling because I had the most vivid dreams. I could remember a lot of what I had dreamt, and yet when I woke up, I was still tripping. Even people that I went on the journey with thought that that was quite unusual, wondering how I could fall asleep in that state. Well, I was so exhausted after that first evening that I don't think my body gave a damn what my mental or psychological condition was. The resort I was staying at, they had this juice that you could buy that they actually created daily. Yes, my use of clumsy language should indicate to you how little I actually juice. Even though I live in Scottsdale, I'm not running over to the local juice bar. I probably should. How stupid am I not to take advantage of that? There's probably, at any given time, 50 single women that can put to shame the top 10 Instagram models. Note to self. Go to Juice Bar in Scottsdale. Where was I? Juice in Costa Rica. So you go to this area of the resort and you get yourself a juice. I did this and I immediately snapped into this reality, snapped into this plane of existence. Still had a little bit of the feeling in me. I bring this up only because I think part of the scientific, part of the chemical reaction that your body has to ayahuasca, it's involved with water. It's governed by water. You were advised numerous times, and I believe I made mention of this in episode 29, after you've had the ayahuasca, after you've drank the ayahuasca, you are now with Mother Ayahuasca. You are advised prior to, and if any of the shamans see you attempting, do not drink water. Certainly do not drink anything other than water, but do not drink water. And if you really want to go to hell and back, eat something. So for hours on end, and when I say hours on end, that could be 6, 8, 10 hours, you aren't drinking any water. Given the level of purge that people go through, you can see that the water, or lack thereof, multiplied by the purge, you have yourself some healthy dehydration. So part of the psychedelic effect, part of the way your body reacts in the throes of Mother Ayahuasca, it's dehydration. Got the juice in me, got that sugar in me, boom, snap back into this plane of existence. The ceremony for the second night was involving masculine energy. And in preparation for this ceremony, you get a lot of the spiritual, you get a lot of the metaphysical interpretations, lessons on what masculine energy actually means. Of course, both masculine and feminine energy are felt by both genders, are experienced by both genders. Both genders are governed by both of these energies. So my intention going into that ceremony, I thought, this is going to be right up my alley. I'm going to be somewhat aggressive, somewhat ambitious about what my intentions are because I was optimistic about that ceremony. Again, you were guided as to what your potential intentions are, and my intentions for that evening were: merge me with my soul at all costs and heal my heart. To give you, dear listener, some context with regard to those intentions, based on some of the things that I had experienced the night before, the first night, the things that I saw of myself and how I had been shaped as a child into the preteen that I was, how I was shaped as a preteen into the teenager I was, how I was shaped as a teenager into the young adult I was, how I was shaped as a young adult into the adult I am today. My intention was to scrape away a lot of the things that had shaped me into who I am today and to merge back with the person that I was when I was kicking around on a tricycle. And rather than resent myself or any of the people who had helped turn me into the adult I am today, just let all that go. Heal your heart, forgive, move on. Ceremony begins, and there's clearly a different vibe from the first night. It is a more masculine energy. The music, the way the ceremony is progressing, particularly some of the dances that the shaman are engaged in, very masculine energy. Let me illustrate as much by way of one of the songs. Fast forward to the next day, many of the people in what we would call an immediate post-ceremony integration were discussing the music, and one song in particular. I vibrated very well. My frequency was very in tune with this song. I was an outlier. Just to put it in context, I'm back into the throes of Mother Ayahuasca at this point. I am, again, tripping balls. The music begins to escalate, and one of the songs is very primal, is very violent. It reminded me specifically of the scene in Full Metal Jacket when they're approaching the city of Wei and the Marines have to gradually march through those obliterated city streets up to the buildings where they believe there to be enemy forces. Do you remember that scene, dear listener? Now, I had no concept of time, but in the post-mortem where several people discussed this song, and most their disdain for as much, it seemed to go on for 15, 20 minutes. As opposed to most, I had a completely different reaction. Loved it. Not going to go so far as to say that my dick got hard, but I'm not going to say that the blood didn't have some flow. I'm not going to say that I was completely flaccid. So, perhaps the only one, I was enjoying my moment during this part of the masculine ceremony. Again, back to where I was the night before, I could see this honeycomb. I could see energy all around everything. I could see how thoughts, how feelings can be conveyed, can be projected out into the universe. The first line of thought that I had from my tripping balls, barely legible notes: manifestation, manifesting. Big, lucrative industry, from fortune tellers to self-help gurus, even religious figures in Christianity, in Hinduism and Buddhism. Here's how you manifest everything that you want. Here's the secret. There's a movie, there's a book. The interesting thing to me as I was in this place, as I was sitting with Mother Ayahuasca, it's all true. You can manifest. You can concentrate your feelings and your thoughts on things that you want, and it will be projected out in the universe. It reverberates in a vibration out into the universe, and it starts to come back to you. So what's the epiphany, dear listener? As I said in episode 29, many of the answers that we seek are right in front of us. We're staring at them for not days, not months, not years, not decades, perhaps all of our lives, and we can't see it. People sit in church or at their bedside at night and they pray. People meditate. Maybe it's during yoga. Maybe it's during some other form of exercise, Pilates, running, swimming, maybe dancing. I'm going to manifest what I want and it's going to come to me. Our thoughts are energy. We're projecting this energy out into the universe. The universe will respond. Let me ask you, dear listener, to just engage in the opposite type of exercise. Don't take time to focus on what you want, to try to clear your mind and manifest. Take time to simply observe your thoughts in your day-to-day actions. You wake up, you get out of bed, you start your morning routine, you get into your work routine. What are you thinking? How are you feeling? Many of us in these routines have become so much habit that we're thinking constantly during these routines and we're not even paying attention to the thoughts as we're moving through the routines. I'm sitting here in this room listening to this music, seeing what I'm seeing and realizing that during many of the routines that I have, I am thinking thoughts and I don't realize how I got to the thought I am thinking when I recognize I am thinking the thought. Listen to me. Think about what I'm saying. I don't recognize how I got to the thought I am thinking until I'm observing the thought that I'm thinking. When you actually scale back, when you actually try to observe, be mindful, notice, how did I get to that thought? Was that the thought that popped into my head that I am now thinking when I am observing my thought? Is that the feeling, is that the emotion that I was experiencing when I realized that I was experiencing the feeling, when I was experiencing the emotion? I know we want to all answer yes. I immediately observe the thoughts that come into my head. I immediately observe the emotions. I immediately observe the feelings. The reality is we don't. We may have 10, 20, 30 different thoughts from the time that we wake up until we're brushing our teeth or coming out of the shower or what have you. We may have an entire stream, a series of thoughts before we recognize we are neck deep in the thought that we're having. We are neck deep in the feeling that we are experiencing, the emotion that we're experiencing. And generally, if we are even being that mindful, which most of us are not, it is not what we want. It's generally playing out a scenario in your head of something that you don't want. A situation involving a spouse, a child, a coworker, a client. In this thought, in this imagination, you're playing out a scenario that's what? That's exactly how you want it to play out? No! Generally, you're having a concern about it being confrontational, about something that you want not happening and how you're going to have to manage it, about the emotions that you're going to experience as you're going through this situation. Anger, frustration, disappointment, doubt. And you may not realize that you've had an entire series of thoughts that have led to that scenario before you even realize you're thinking about this very particular scenario. You see yourself in this scenario not getting what you want. How long do you think that was? Were you doing that for 3 minutes? Were you doing that for 5 minutes? Were you doing that for 20 minutes? From the time you got out of bed, until perhaps you're combing your hair, you're shaving. Yes, ladies, I know you shave as well. This is a unisex point that I'm making here. You may have spent easily 20 minutes going through all of these thoughts, all of these emotions, all of these feelings, none of it being particularly what you wanted before you realize this is what you've been doing. How long did you pray in church? How long did you pray before you went to bed? How long were you focused on your run? How long were you focused in yoga? How long were you focused on your drive into work? How long did you focus on what you wanted in these moments that you were taking for yourself to manifest what you wanted versus all the time you spent thinking about things that you didn't want without even realizing how you got there? Do you want to know what I wrote in my notes? Most people manifest, including you, in an amalgam of clusterfuck. Let me repeat. Most people manifest, including you, in an amalgam of clusterfuck. You take 5, you take 10, you take maybe any one of you take 20 minutes to really focus and concentrate your emotion, your feelings, and in particular your thoughts on what you want. And then for the other 23 hours and 40 minutes of the day, you are in this race of thought, this amalgam of clusterfuck, where generally you are thinking about the things, you are feeling the things, your emotions are consistent with the things that you do not want. So here I am in Costa Rica trying to go through all these layers of myself that have been built up over the course of decades, wondering why, hey, are you in the right place now? Why don't you have more money? Why haven't you reached the zenith of happiness? And then I can see my own thoughts. I can see my own emotions. I can see my own feelings as a transmission out into the universe. And I'm giving myself probably no more a day than 10, 15, 20 minutes of pure positive manifestation. I lock into the rest of my day and it is an amalgam of clusterfuck. I'm pulled in every direction by not only my mind, but by, in particular, the stimuli that I am confronted with. For all of us, that's namely in our career, but that's also in our own ambition otherwise. The things that we want to do socially, the things that we want to do spiritually. All of these desires create more and more expectation, and more expectation creates more and more opportunity to do what? To think about, to feel all the different possibilities of how these things aren't happening immediately and how they may not be happening anytime soon, and all the scenarios of how you're going to navigate them not happening. I hope the wheel is spinning in your head, dear listener. We sabotage ourselves. The universe in many ways is just a computer, and we are the software. We are the programming. It's reflecting everything that we're giving it. When there's an error as users of computers, think about it. We generally blame the computer. This stupid machine. The computer is just running code. That code is coming from a programmer. So to the extent that we're ever frustrated at the computer, we should be frustrated with the programmer who wrote the software that's executing code poorly. More accurately, we should really be frustrated with the user, because generally it's us that doesn't understand how to execute the code via the programming, and the computer is just doing what we're telling it. The universe is the exact same way. We're giving the universe the code, we're giving the universe the inputs, and it's just giving back to us what we are giving it. After coming to such a realization, I had to take a shit. Mother Ayahuasca's little "you're welcome" for coming to such a realization. As I made offerings to this porcelain goddess, recognizing that many of the triumphs that I had ever had, but mostly the disappointments that I've ever had, were all because of me, I realized that worry was futile. If I could just be more aware, be more mindful, be more focused on what I want versus what I don't want, I don't have to worry about it coming into being. I simply need to focus on the why. The universe will take care of the how. I began to have a sense of trust and a sense of relief that I can't remember the last time I've ever felt, if I've ever felt it at all. Very quickly, that moved into a feeling of pain. Yes, pain. I became hyper aware of not only the offerings that I was making, but I became hyper aware of what everybody else was doing in that moment. Folks, there was some healthy purging going on all around. I don't know that I focused on it in episode 29, but I actually made a note of it, and I'm going to talk about it right here, right now. I have never been exposed to that much pain and suffering. I have been very fortunate in my life. My grandparents lived a very long time. They only recently passed away. Most everyone in my family is not only alive, but they're doing pretty well. Very few of them are exposed or are suffering from a long or chronic illness. Accordingly, I have not been exposed to the phenomenon of retching. R-E-T-C-H-I-N-G, dear listener. Sitting on this porcelain throne, being someone that really has a hard time vomiting. I am listening, I'm being bombarded, my auditory senses are overwhelmed by a number, I mean plural, a number of people that are in the throes of retching. I was taken by the violence of it. People in the medical profession are probably much more familiar with it, specifically those that have worked in hospitals, but retching can be a terrible, terrible, violent thing to witness, violent thing to hear. In the midst of this, it was overwhelming. I wasn't necessarily feeling all of this pain. In truth, I was feeling a level of relief, given the intensity of what I was doing, the purge that I was having. But at the same time, given what all of these other people were going through, I was experiencing their pain. I felt subjected to their experience. Now, again, I'm tripping my balls off. This is not a pleasant way to be experiencing this psychedelic phenomenon. As we were counseled by a number of people prior to the ceremony, prior to the first ceremony, and again, prior to this ceremony, I began to breathe. I began to focus specifically on my breath. I was attempting to bring myself back to center given what I was experiencing. My breaths became more intense. I began breathing in more deeply and exhaling more deeply. And a funny thing happened, dear listener. I began to feel all of this emotion, all of this pain that was driving people into retching. I was breathing it in and I was exhaling it out and I was expelling it from our collective consciousness. I can't tell you how long this went on, but I can tell you that it actually went on for a while. How do I know that? Because someone actually knocked on the door and asked me if I was okay. I had clearly been in the bathroom long enough where one of the shaman came to the realization that that guy's been gone a long time. Hope he's okay. Let me go check on him. In my mind, as I was experiencing this, I felt that I was both faithfully helping these people and yet trapped by them. I wanted to help expel, to expunge, to purge all of this pain, all of these negative emotions, and yet I felt I could not get out of it. I could not stop this from happening. So my only path was to move forward, was to continue in my breath, these deep inhalations, these deep exhalations, in order to try to purge all of this negativity. It slowly started to sink into me. This is what empathy feels like. This is what compassion feels like. This is what love feels like. You want to help. You want to see other people have success. You want to You want to feel their joy. But very often, because you have little control over what they're going to do, you have to ride out that roller coaster. You have to ride out all the bumps and bruises. These are emotions that I haven't felt in years. This may come as a shock to you, dear listener, but working in the legal profession, having empathy, having compassion, having love, well, those aren't part of the tool set. These are certainly not requisites necessary to navigate a civil lawsuit. In fact, trying to employ these tools in that process can often be counterproductive. I felt the weight of empathy. I felt the weight of compassion. I felt the weight of love for these people as they were experiencing their purge. There were very successful, wealthy people going through this experience. In that moment, I didn't see them as wealthy, experienced, professional adults. I saw us all as the children that we were going through this pain together. None of us were the same, but we could all share in one thing, this vulnerability. We were all on the same journey with Mother Ayahuasca. And that's when it hit. Merge me with my soul at all costs. Well, what are the costs? You want to feel empathy? You want to feel compassion? You want to feel love? And what do you want from those things? You want what you want. You want what you expect out of them. Hey, isn't this supposed to make me feel good? Hey, isn't this supposed to make me feel rewarded? Hey, shouldn't I be getting a universal pat on the back? The reality is that you have to be in tune with other people's pain, with other people's purging, no matter how ignorant that purge may be, the anger that they're feeling, the frustration that they're feeling, the way that it manifests. It's easy to be empathetic, to be compassionate when you hear somebody retching their guts out, so violent that it contorts their entire body. They lose control. But what about when they're boo-hooing on their Twitter feed? What about when they're in front of you in line somewhere and they're having a tantrum with a cashier? What about when you see them at some political rally and they're waving a sign and acting the fool, pledging fealty to some politician who's going to solve all their problems? Can you? Can you feel that empathy? Can you feel that compassion? Can you feel that love in those moments? I pledged to the universe I could. Boom. Forgive them, forgive yourself, heal your heart. It felt like the collective purge ended. Everything just settled down. The energy in the air settled down. Our collective vibration, the frequency just went lower. The music slowed and then stopped. The room went quiet. For my part, I was able to actually get up off that toilet and go back into the room and sit down. In my tripping balls font, I was able to write this all out, while at the same time being immersed in the feeling of empathy, of compassion, of love. Most specifically for all of the people in that room, including myself. So you might ask, you're a completely changed and reformed man. That's not how it works. In fact, it's quite the opposite. As I said in episode 29, what do I have now? I have knowledge. That knowledge means nothing unless I can consistently put it into action, that I can consistently put it into practice, that knowledge can manifest as wisdom. That is what I'm wrestling with now. You come back into the world, and here lies all of the same stimuli that you faced prior to having gone through the spiritual journey with Mother Ayahuasca. I'm not afraid to admit that I now have, from the time that I went on the spiritual journey, sitting with Mother Ayahuasca, and sitting here today, I have significant experience. And what is experience? Experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. I've purged a lot of things, but I haven't quite yet purged the amalgam of clusterfuck. But, dear listener, I am aware of it. I notice it. I am being mindful of it. In that way, I can now better control when that starts to happen. And I will present the challenge to you. I can go back and recount where a thought came into my mind, the number of thoughts that I actually experienced, the thoughts that preceded it, when I got to the thought that I was thinking, when I noticed that I was thinking a thought. That's right. I have a histography. I actually go back and I recount the thoughts to the source thought, and I have then this movie of thoughts that led me from the source thought to where I was when I realized I was thinking. I can focus on that, I can watch it all melt away, and I can go back to either focusing on what I want, or I can remake the movie of those thoughts in my mind. Instead of being subject to the amalgam of clusterfuck, I can rebuild that narrative from thought to thought to thought, having it all comport to what I want. It is as if I am a baby again and I am just learning how to walk. Oh, I stumble. Oh, I fall down. But I pick myself up, I dust myself off, and damn it, I walk again.
Act 2, The Dog and Pony Show That Is Congress.
The news cycle over the course of the last week has involved both what some call the Democratic betrayal of the reconciliation bill being tied to the infrastructure bill and the promises that were made over that, as well as this whole issue over the debt ceiling. Several listeners have reached out to me about commenting on these issues. This actually gives me the opportunity to speak to something that I would like your help in doing, dear listener, and that's trying to promote this very podcast. As I have stated to you before, I would love to retire from what I currently do as a profession, as an occupation, and do something to the effect of podcasting full-time. There's this whole infrastructure now, this whole universe of people who are actually trying to help podcasters promote their own podcasts, obviously for money. And one of the recommendations that is universal, that is fundamental, is have your listeners engage you on social media. This raises your visibility. It invites people to not only engage with you via social media, but then leads them to the content, leads them to the podcast. Given the fact that 99% of my listeners know me personally, when they have a comment, when they have a question, when they want to call me an idiot, they just contact me directly. Is this a product of the fact that most of the people that I know and am close to don't really live their lives through social media? Yes. Is that a great thing? Yes. I couldn't be more proud of you all, dear listeners. Having said that, there are pros and cons to every single thing in life. The universe is going to achieve balance. The pro in this example being you are all living happier, healthier, more productive lives, not engaging 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in the cesspool that is social media. The con is marginal but growing enlightenment can't be shared with the world at large if I don't engage in these social media paradigms to the pleasure of these programmers, these people who are creating the algorithms so that Facebook will like what I'm doing, Instagram will like what I'm doing, Twitter will like what I'm doing, and it will be easily promoted to the user base. Now, this plea to you can't be condemnation because I am you. We are the same. I look at this technology, most of it bewilders me, and I then put it down. I can ignore it. This ignorance is a blessing. Ignorance is in fact bliss. The curse, of course, is in trying to promote this podcast, I'm relying on your ignorant asses to do something that I myself am not capable of doing. I am trying. All I'm asking is for you to try as well. So, if you could engage the podcast via the social media outlets, that would be helpful. Now, back to the specifics of the debt ceiling, the quote-unquote betrayal by the Democrats, failure to tie the infrastructure bill to the reconciliation bill. This is all a dog and pony show. All of these pundits and all of their fake outrage, all of the energy wasted on trying to generate outrage porn over what's going on with specifically the debt ceiling, but even with the reconciliation bill being tied to the infrastructure bill. It's all a dog and pony show. None of it is organic. None of it is authentic. Now, one of my dear listeners has reached out to me in the past and said, "You use this term, dog and pony show." Not familiar with it. It occurred to me if I'm going to reach anybody from Gen Y, Z, ampersand, semicolon, from this new millennial generation, I don't even know what the hell they call themselves or what they've been labeled as. P.S. Those labels are lame as hell. But if I'm ever going to reach any of them, I should probably speak to what these terms actually mean instead of just casually using them and having the listener have to go out and employ the search function on their Google machine. Prior to my spiritual journey, I would probably throw in some sort of casual yet vitriolic remark about how easy it is for one to employ the search function on their Google machine to look up a term like dog and pony show. But now I do realize that if I'm challenged to have to do three things in order to understand, patronize, enjoy something, there's a chance that I will turn away from it. How much do I want to be challenged? Now, personally, I enjoy being challenged. Make me, dear universe, have to consult the Google machine for some sort of turn of phrase, new language, new words, some sort of historical event, social event, political event. But we're not all wired the same, are we? Dog and pony show, you ask. In the early 1900s, the circus was a big deal. How big a deal? All of us know the name P.T. Barnum. We know that name because of the traveling circus and the fact that P.T. Barnum is now part of the fabric of America. It was a phenomenon, the traveling circus. People loved it. But the traveling circus was a business like any other business. There were remote areas of this country, of which there were many, that the traveling circus would not go to because it was not economically feasible. There weren't enough people in the area for the traveling circus to make enough money for it to go to that area. Like in any market, the invisible hand moved, and there were smaller productions that would go to more remote, to more rural areas, and they would fill in the gap for what was the majesty of P.T. Barnum and his traveling circus. They were smaller productions that would go to smaller areas. The invisible hand is a genius. The invisible hand knows. Certainly with a smaller production, you have cheaper, less costly production values. You have cheaper, less costly production costs. But still, if the numbers in the audience aren't high enough, even a cheaper production isn't going to make enough money in order to travel to all these remote areas. You've got to get more out of the people than simply the price of admission. How can you do that? Well, what if you could serve the patrons a delicious glass of liquor? As much as we Americans enjoy our entertainment, damn it, we enjoy a delicious glass of liquor while enjoying the entertainment. What if part of the entertainment, while enjoying a glass of liquor, involved women with, let's say, looser morals than were prevalent at the time? What if those women were part of the act? Or what if those women were part of a side act? You can go online and see some of the flyers for the original Dog and Pony shows in 1900, 1901, 1902. They were shows that were very small circuses where the animals were literally dogs and or ponies. These were B movies for the beginning of the 20th century. These were the telenovas of the soap opera world in the beginning of the 20th century. As with any lower production, a B movie, a telenova, you're trying to minimize cost and maximize profit. Very quickly, the Dog and Pony show developed a reputation for the deliciousness or probably lack thereof of the alcoholic beverages available at these shows, and the scandal that was scantily clad women. And let's be clear, if you're on a Dog and Pony show circuit in the middle of Kansas and Nebraska in 1901, probably not the most attractive woman. The Dog and Pony show very quickly developed a reputation. Not 10 years ago, not even 10 years ago, the Sci-Fi Channel went all in on this theme and did a series of movies with, to be kind, movie, music, television stars whose light was no longer shining. They were featured in asinine and absurd science fiction movies that were pure unintentional comedy. The apex of this phenomenon was a movie called Sharknado. Sharknado circa 2013. Again, you can certainly find out anything that you wanted to know about this on your Google machine. Sharknado was the apex of this phenomenon. With social media and with the promotion of this quote-unquote movie, I remember there being a level of disappointment when people actually watched what it was. At its best, it is a B movie. At its best, you were watching it for the unintentional comedy. When promoted, those elements actually slink away. There's less unintentional comedy when it looks like it's being intentionally done. The veneer of what they're trying to market to you falls away when you get it. When you understand, okay, this is a low-budget movie, it's supposed to be unintentionally funny, and because they are trying, it misses the mark. It's a hell of a thing when your audience becomes sophisticated to what you're trying to do. Are the wheels in your head spinning yet, dear listener? This fake outrage, this outrage porn over the debt ceiling, it's all a Dog and Pony show. It is all a sideshow to distract you from real issues that this country is facing. This fake outrage, this outrage porn over the reconciliation bill being separated from the infrastructure bill, if you didn't see that coming a year ago, don't look at the politicians. Look at yourself. Are you the type of person who, although it sounds too good to be true, is going to shell out $20 to go see the unicorn? The carnival barker is persuasive. The carnival barker is relentless. Are you the type of person that's going to shell out the $20 to see the unicorn behind the closed door, the veil of the tent? It's a goat with a horn glued to its head. It was a goat with a horn glued to its head 120 years ago. It's a goat with a horn glued to its head in 2021. Dear listener, if the Dog and Pony show works, you're going to get nothing more than the Dog and Pony show. A sideshow to distract you from what? Your problems, the real issues that not only you, but your community, your state, your country faces. In addition, it amounts to no more lowbrow, low-rent entertainment provided to separate you from some of your dollar bills. When you take a sip of that liquor drink and you smell ammonia or you taste gasoline, when you succumb to your basest instincts, when you lustily anticipate the woman behind the screen and the screen is taken away and your immediate gut reaction is to be repulsed, stop fighting it. Stop fighting your instinctive, your gut reaction. These politicians know months in advance that they're going to have a dog and pony show coming into town to talk about the debt ceiling, to distract you from real issues. These politicians know months in advance that they're going to separate the reconciliation bill from the infrastructure bill. It's all planned out, and it is terrible. It is dim-witted. It is low-brow dog and pony show. They get up on the stage and they fake outrage and they fake disgust and they act like they weren't aware of some of these deadlines and they act like they weren't aware of some of the procedural rules and they just blame other people. Democrats will blame the Republicans and the Republicans will blame the Democrats, and they all go back after the show and they pat one another on the back and they pick up their shit, their cheap, their sparse, their limited production values, they put them in a wagon, and they roll that wagon to the next crisis. The next manufactured crisis so they can roll out another dog and pony show. It really, really, really isn't on them, dear listener. It's on us. How much dog and pony show are we going to consume? This is Why I Don't Vote, a podcast.